In a negotiation, you're not supposed to talk first, so I'm not going first.
Oh, I was just going to say that you have a good show start here, man. Is the sphere making things worse for you? Yes, it is. Show over. Let's go.
Thanks, guys. Like and subscribe. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Red Morning. I guess you saw the topic here. I know you're probably thinking it's going to be a bunch of like Carl and me shit talking, and it's probably going to be because we are who
Yeah.
we are. But it's honestly, it's a bigger point. It's like, what's the point of doing this if your life ends up functionally worse because of it?
Yeah, it's like heroin.
Ooh, I like that reference. Yeah, it feels good, kind of relaxing. You can handle it. You don't get what everybody sees the problem with, and then 3 minutes later, you're like, yeah, I'm sucking dick to steal a VCR to get some coke, so I can trade that in for heroin.
And I like the story you had, like the how you came up with the show idea. Like some dude, like girl takes him over to see her parents or some shit, and he starts blabbering to one of her friends that she's about to hit the wall.
Oh
That's
yeah,
like the
it's
ultimate kind of stupidity.
I know. Yeah, relationships text their little Twitter account. It actually came on after I thought of it, but I just reinforced it in my head. It's like this is clearly a topic. Yeah, Buddy was dating a girl for like 6 months, so he probably thought it was his long term girlfriend because 6 months is as long as 18-year-olds know. And the one friend was 36 and the one was 27. And then he started talking about how they're looking to find a man and settle down. He goes, well, you better hurry before your eggs are gone at 30 and you hit the wall. And I was just like, oh. Girl ended up dumping him, thanking everybody he was an asshole. And then next thing you know, there's 5 more feminist hit pieces on why the Rule Zero crew is misogynist and creating these kind of terrorists. I think that's what they call us now, isn't it? Isn't it terrorism now that the Orange Man's gone?
Yeah, but to be fair, I'm working very, very, very hard at getting that association away from me by being as hostile to Trumpers as I can on my Twitter feed.
I saw that. I was like, oh, it's time for another purge. Because
Well, my thinking is just like they're not going to have my account taken down if I'm constantly slamming Trump supporters because Twitter likes when Trump supporters get slammed.
dude, that's funny because I literally started following a few pieces of like the Rainbow Alphabet Mafia. Follow this one girl, and it ended up being interesting. So I'm like, oh, that's good. Like a former sex worker, this one bimbo Ubermensch, and I'm just like, perfect. A bunch of like Tumblr chicks, and then I read their takes, and I'm like, these guys have actually read more of the Manosphere than 90% of the Manosphere. It's actually kind of interesting. Isn't that always the way though? It's always that lurker girl. They end up knowing more.
Well, I think it's just a force of habit. Like hate is a good motivator.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really, really hate the manosphere, you're gonna go through it with a fine-tooth comb trying to find every little thing. Like, yeah, people say that Ryan's so great, but he drops an N-bomb 4 hours into his live stream on this particular cast.
You, and that's funny because I know it's a joke, but I also know that I guarantee you people do that. I just think to that PewDiePie one where he had, what was it? Something like 1,000 hours of online time, and the New York Times went through all of it to find one 5 second clip to try and hammer his Disney contract. Like, it's just amazing.
Yeah, but it's kind of like I'm not sure how familiar you are with it from your time in corporate, but when you get like lobbyist hit piece reports or things like that,
Ooh, luckily enough, I was part of like the regulatory side of these things, so didn't have a lot of like the front sales thing, so I never got to see a lot of that.
so what's hilarious about them is you can always tell that they put a lot of time, energy, and money into making these things.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you start to read them, you can kind of tell that, okay, they're trying to push you towards their way of seeing things, but they found absolutely no evidence for it. So they're just kind of trying to weasel their way around it.
Oh, okay. I have seen that with the military. They love to do that, and that was always so transparent. You'd see plenty of like my favorite for those was when they would talk about military members and they'd conflate reservists with like regular force members, which is like the equivalent of conflating a Blackwater employee to a guy who runs a paintball range.
And the reason why I love those kind of things is just you can tell that they're familiar with the data, but you can also tell that shit, my salary depends on them not changing this. So I'm going to fudge as much as I can without getting to the point where they can obviously tell that this is fraud.
It's a pretty fine line. It's kind of crazy too, because like that takes real skill. Like a lot of the hit pieces I see, and for anything, politics, military, whatever, it takes real skill for the person to like twist the language to draw that kind of narrative that would influence people. And I'm just wondering, we could have been on the moon right now. We could have been on Mars by now. But all these people are like, no, my goal is to like carefully craft a hit piece on an entire organization to secure funding from my organization for another quarter. Just boggles the mind.
And the worst part about it is they're real easy to kind of see through. Because when you start to look at them, you start to notice, well, okay, their source references are kind of fudged. Mm-hmm. Instead of having something where when they refer to something that clearly says this is the exact document I'm referring to, this paragraph type, university
like
style citations.
Yeah.
They don't have that. They'll just put like 18 different things at the end. So you'll have to go, okay, so that might come from there. And then they do that, like this linguistic mumbo jumbo that I personally love, where they make something and they make it very clear that this is an assumption. They can't promise this thing on like page 2. And then they refer back to that assumption on like page 12, where based on this, and they don't go like, oh yeah, you remember that assumption on page 2? They go like, according to sources or according to the premise or something like that. So they're basically, okay, we're going to make up this bullshit and we're going to start referring to that as not being bullshit like 12 pages in, because no fucking way is anyone going to go back.
Yeah, or remember what the reference was on page 2, para 3. Damn clever.
And then there's always like that whole eye-catching thing where they give you that slogan, like usually like 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 or, something like that. Mm-hmm. And you start to look at the numbers and the numbers don't add up. And, they've added a data series that takes, all the corporate fraud cases in every country in the Western world over the last 15 years. And they can show there's actually an increase, that type of thing.
Dude, one of my favorite ones of those is the terrorism ones, terrorism reports that they try to weasel out of that, where they talk about how it's always the right side usually just talks about Islamic terrorism, and then the left always talks about white nationalist terrorism. And then you'll always see the white nationalist terrorism. They're like, look, between October 2001 and May 2016, like the month before the Orlando shooting, it's clearly all been like Ku Klux Klan members. And I was like, it's kind of funny you pick those specific dates to make your point. And every time I see those, I always check like what happened just before the dates they set and what happened just after. And it's always something that like completely refutes the point.
Yeah, I saw that. One of the funniest ones I've seen ever try and do that thing was someone was working with murder statistics.
Oh.
And at that point, they were like, well, if you look at like the last 150 murders in the last, something like, if you look at all the murders in the last 10 years or something like that, then all of those were committed by foreign nationals or people or immigrants. And they're like, what did they exclude here? Oh yeah, mass shooting by a white nationalist that took like 78 lives.
Oops. That's the thing. It's always very Weasley. And that kind of is what I'm getting to at the point. Like with Ross's here where he says swallowing the pill is traumatic. First off, swallowing the pill, I don't put that quite on the par with red pill aware, but it's close. Like I've seen, and you can always tell when somebody's and this is not crapping on you, Ross. It's just so many field reports. A guy will say something like, swallow the pill, spit it out, swallowed it again. Yeah, it's hard to take down. And like all this like congratulatory language about how difficult something is. And they'll use words like traumatic and that. And don't get me wrong, getting zeroed out sucks. But if you think it's going to be hard, then it is. I don't know who said that one. It's probably something like Faust or blame it. Maybe it's because I haven't read Macbeth.
We get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
But that's the thing. And Carl, like, totally vouched for me in this one. Getting zeroed out, getting stabbed by your wife, military running you for espionage, all kinds of crap. Everybody has their pain, and it really does suck. But as soon as you start talking about it being traumatic and stuff, you're just building that same false narrative where people act like you survived a certain Austrian painter's culling process. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's the whole thing. You're always talking about trauma survivors now. And
Yeah.
everyone has to have, I was really traumatized, and I can kind of get, like, if you went, let's say you went to Vietnam and you had your leg blown off with Lieutenant Dan, I can kind of see, yeah, that was probably traumatic for you. But, Chad stood you up on a Tuesday coffee date. Was that really traumatic? Someone
Yeah.
called you fat in the 4th grade. Is that really trauma that haunts you to this day?
Yeah. I know exactly. And the weird thing is though, because nobody wants to call anything out for bullshit anymore. Because everybody's doing their own bullshit. Oh, jeez. All right, I gotta put this one up just because it's so goddamn funny. Somebody just won the internet for today. I'm leaving that up for a while. You son of a bitch.
I kind of get where you're coming from. I mean, you had like a great example on it that we probably shouldn't be talking. Well, we could probably, like, the biggest account on Day Game doesn't do actual Day Game.
Yeah. We could use 2 of the 3 references. Yeah, the biggest Day Game account on Twitter doesn't do Day Game. The biggest make money account on Twitter has like a Forex scam and is wanted by Interpol. And you survive this stuff, but that's the point. Nobody wants to call anybody out on bullshit anymore because they're worried about their own bullshit. And so everybody's calling it trauma. And so everybody's like, yeah, of course it's trauma. And it's going to be me jumping back and forth between topics, but it's been memory hold, and I'm hoping you know what I'm talking about here. There was an old UK study from like 2005 on PTSD where they were trying to figure out how come British soldiers were coming back with higher instances of PTSD than American soldiers or Canadian soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it turns out the finding was because they came home and there was automatically like, here's your PTSD training, here's your thing, here's a shrink. Everybody just assumed that every soldier coming back had PTSD. And that actually increased the proclivity of soldiers to report PTSD findings because it was the expectation that they would have it. And it's been memory hold. I've been trying to find it for like 5 years and I still can't find the goddamn thing.
No, I kind of get where you're coming from because I read a book this week by a dude named Carl Hart. Mm-hmm. He's like a neuroscience researcher at Columbia, I think it is.
Right.
And he just came out, he's a tenured Columbia professor, successful author, has a family, and he uses heroin.
Huh. It's a very diverse skill set.
And he came out with that because his thinking was that you have a lot more drug use in society than you can actually see, but all you see are the people who really get fucked up on it.
Right.
Like, everyone sees, Roosh when he completely went off the rails after doing a bit too much or something.
Oh,
We just have 8 or 9 accounts that haven't quite landed yet.
I wonder if that's the whole point. It's just what level are you on the Roosh scale? I'm 0.7 Roosh right now. I haven't quite found God, but I have found mushrooms. Well, I've gone 1.2 Roosh. I'm almost to an entire Cernovich level right now. Oh, wow. Yeah, I found a way to turn my finding God into a grift. Jeez, this guy's amazing. Oh.
I do think that that's one of the things I've been wondering, though, because when you talk, the grifts are obviously making it worse for people.
Mm-hmm.
But how much do you think is driven by the grift, and how much is just like there was a big thing in the sphere about psychedelica like a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, that is that ayahuasca or what?
Ayahuasca, yeah. I think Goldman brought that one in, and that kind of made me think about it. Like from a grift level, suddenly everyone was talking about it, and everyone was like, "Yeah, I did acid, I did this, I did that," and it's like, how many people actually went and did it, and how many were just saying that they were doing it? Like, same thing with a cold shower thing. Like, how many people were actually taking cold showers, and how many people were actually just saying that they were taking cold showers on Twitter to be cool in with the cool crowd?
I have to. It's my professional responsibility to bring up all the people talking about revolution against the Democrats and how many people actually went to do it. Yeah, fair point. I'm sure, too, a lot of people are just LARPing. And that's the one time LARPing is advantageous is when idiots are running grifts. Like, absolutely false, horrible, damaging grifts. Everybody will just say they did it, but not actually did it. Which is weird, though. Like, one piece of stupidity cancels out a second piece of stupidity, and you're left at 0 at least. Okay, that's pretty optimistic.
I think it's kind of. I don't think the stats are that good. I think we have like 3 instances of stupid for every like one thing that
Actual
cancels it
follow-through.
out.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess we'll do these super chats here. They're coming in fast. I hate the idea of missing them. Vincent, thank you for the £10 super chat. Oh, look at you all, Brexit. Sensationalism, herd mentality, fake issues, the thing I hate most about people today. That's what you picked? Dude, there's so much better to hate about people today. They can't figure out a life purpose themselves, so they pre-make one from social media. I would argue that's young people. People that don't have responsibilities tend to take pre-made life scripts from social media. More often than not, when a guy gets older, he just lets his wife pick it for him. And that's what they end up doing with that happy wife, happy life shit and chore play and all that nonsense. I know it doesn't get a lot of play because it's not like super sensational, but I mean, let's face it, Carl. Everybody knows that one married friend they have who does the happy wife, happy life shtick, and you could see the pain behind his eyes. Or
Yeah,
maybe
at the
they
same
don't
time,
do it
though,
in...
like I have a female coworker or ex coworker, and she was kind of like a really diligent fucking planner. Like she ran that family, if you know what I mean.
Oh.
And her husband, he had to block out shit in his calendar like 3 months ahead
Jesus.
just to be able to block off. No, I want to watch a baseball game that day.
Imagine like 3 months of work just because you don't have the balls to tell your wife no. That's the real problem with the sphere is that nobody's talking about this except for like you, me, and I think like one or two other guys.
And, to some extent, I can agree that, the whole idea with shared calendars is sensible.
Mm-hmm.
But, a month ahead, maybe 2 weeks ahead, don't plan out. Like, if you have a quarterly report and a quarterly telecast of your relationship, you're doing it wrong.
Oh, yeah, the quarterly relationship meetings. I had totally forgot. Speaking of damaging stuff, that's what gets me. It's not that there's damaging stuff that people are like, oh, they'll tell you to smoke cigarettes to get your testosterone up. Whatever. Everybody kind of knows that's BS. It's that one there. The one that doesn't kill you right away. You sit down and you talk to your girlfriend about the state of your sex life or something and dries her out. And 10 years later, you realize that's cost you like 80% of the sex you could have had in a relationship. But then by then, the guy's already off on his next grift. Mushrooms and meth your way to masculinity or something.
Yeah, like,
that's the one that gets me.
like,
There's no accountability to it. There's no even memory about where it came from.
And there's also the whole thing with girls like to sabotage themselves. They're ultimate self-sabotagers if you leave them to it.
Uh-huh.
So, like, the most obvious thing is they'll find the things they found attractive about you in the beginning and they'll start to kind of chip away at them until suddenly they're sitting there like, you changed. I'm no longer in love with you. And it's like, of course you're not, because you made a completely different dude.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't even blame her because she's not actively trying to. It's just she knows there's anxiety that comes with all your super attractive stuff. What if another girl takes him? How am I going to keep this guy loyal? And so she's like, if I get rid of all that stuff, it'll make me a little more comfortable. But then the problem is when she's comfortable, she's like, I don't have to sleep with you. I got jogging pants today. It's good. So it's like this weird... Like, I honestly don't feel bad for girls. I mean, I feel bad for girls in the sense that, like, imagine if your whole life was spent basically refusing to bring any level of success. I don't know how else to word it. It's like that sabotage thing you talked about. And that if you run on instinct, that's exactly what you're going to do. So it's almost like your life happiness relies on having a guy there to save you from yourself.
And, in a relationship, you always have to have that quota. And I'm talking, actual long-term here, not that whole just kick her out, just ditch her type moves. I'm talking long-term, you're going to have that quota she gets, or rather the quota you have for yourself of, okay, I'm going to do this just so she'll shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and then, but do you want to encourage more of it? So sometimes is it worth picking a stupid hill to die on just to establish that, this kitty still has claws?
Well, I think that's the smartest one, because you always find at least I do, I try to find the thing that makes the least fucking sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you could fight over either how clean the house is, or that cup of coffee. Fight over the cup of coffee.
Oh yeah, the more nonsensical, the better. Manufactured outrage. It keeps things
Because
fresh.
because it's one of those things, like, usually they do have some good ideas once in a while, so you may want to adopt some of them, but you can't let her win every time.
Nope. I agree. And that's the thing. If she's able to win every time because it's always a good idea, then that kind of lets you know, hey, maybe there's something about my life I need to work on here. If I can't come up with one good idea to her 10, you know?
And that one is also like, guys are everyone's a creature of habit, but guys tend to be lazy creatures of habit. So a lot of the shit we do is just out of it's less work. So like this
efficiency. Let's say efficiency. Let's be optimistic.
It's like the sad MGTOW apartments, huge
Right.
TV, gaming console, comfortable chair, and a desk to have his beer on.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the least amount of furniture. You add a bed to that, and you have like the technical least amount of furniture you need to get, and that also means there's less shit that needs to be cleaned. Plus, it sends a very good signal. Like, one of the kind of subtle signals I always, when I was running game actively,
Right.
only one pillow and one blanket in the bed.
Oh, dude, I lost that battle last month. We got those stupid body pillows. I still hate mine.
Fair enough.
There's my beta male moment of the year. Although, to be fair, I just don't like it because then you lose so much headspace, and I have to climb to the bottom of the bed. Otherwise, I have to sit here and crack my neck up. So I just put it to the side of the bed now. So now it's there. So when I swing my arm at night, when I have the night terrors, I don't hit the wall. I just hit the pillow.
What do you have night terrors over? You saw like one Somali pirate ship.
Dude, the only issues I have from sleeping from the military is I can't sleep with open space. Like, I don't know if anybody here is in the Navy. You can maybe this is just me. But when I got home, I couldn't sleep in a bed for like 3 months. I had to sleep on the sofa because I was so used to the small space of like your coffin in your mess that I just needed it. And even now, my girl notices, like, why do you sit in like the fetal position wedged into the corner of the bed? I'm like, because I need the lack of space or I can't sleep. Speaking of trauma too, Ross here with the red pill trauma is on the same level of crashing your first car. You take time to understand what happened a week later and buy a new car and move on. Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I see ya. Like I said, it wasn't crapping on you specifically. Although, Carl, let me get your thought on this. Something that Weinstein guy actually said about using metaphors. Or
Harvey or Eric?
Eric, I think. Who was the one before?
Because Harvey probably won't
go
listen to him
Harvey.
right now.
Jesus Christ. I was thinking, which brother was that one? Oh, that's the third brother, the one they don't talk about. Why use a metaphor when you have a perfectly good example? Or why use an analogy when you got one? And I was thinking, like, for a lot of this stuff, everybody always tries to use metaphor and allegory and similes to talk about red pill as a reference. It's like, why not just use the actual example? You got zeroed out. It pissed you off. You use that to kickstart your ability to change your life in your own best interest. It's one of those things. And I think if we stuck to that more, it would be, and again, this is, Ross, I'm just springboarding you as an example here. I'm not dunking on you. I totally get what you're saying and I agree. But you know what I mean? Where it kind of focuses then on experience as opposed to who can craft the best wordsmith allegory that explains the red pill, you know?
Yeah, but people are good about lying with their experience. Like, we have a ton of those guys on Twitter. Mm-hmm. They're good at writing, but have very limited life experience. And a lot of the time, I just get this feeling that some guys just find the manosphere and they hang around it and hang out in the clubhouse for like a month. Don't read anything, doesn't watch anything or listen to anything, just hanging around watching Twitter. And they're like, I could be a guru.
Yeah. Oh, I have no doubts it's that. I've seen guys who are like, yeah, I found your channel from, and they'll pick some like big name brand, and they're like, hey, I've been red pill with him for like 5 years. What's a shit test? And you're just like, who's Rolo? And I'm like, what are these people talking about? How do you not know this basic stuff?
And that's when you start getting that weird shit, like reading lips is a superpower.
I'm not too proud to admit I'm not alpha male enough to read lips. I don't know how to do it.
And then you get all that kind of weird shit that kind of comes through, and that's kind of what ruined AJ Cortez.
Oh, really? He's blocked me a long time ago since the
Oh yeah,
whole
but I
dust
just
up. So
remember watching kind of because Goldman was kind of he's that type of dude that's into all kinds of spiritual woo woo shit.
yeah.
But AJ started out as kind of like, yeah, workout coach. I'm gonna sell training programs. I'm gonna do this, and that was good.
Hmm.
But I'm not sure when. At some point, he just started to get into numerology, and he was into astrology, and then he started to get into all this kind of weird animal symbolism about lions and manes and why you should grow your hair long and shit.
Oh man. Okay, I remember that was around the same time he did that one photo with the Tates where he was dressed up like Sagat from Street Fighter to talk about some like make yourself unkillable course or something, wasn't it? Which I love
like
Street
that.
Fighter, so I'm like, it's kind of cool, but still kind of larpy. Walk in there dressed as Guile. Looks good, man. Oh yes.
That's just kind of like the part of what's making it worse, because it used to be like simple shit. Like, and I've gone over this, but like working out fine, not eating like a 5-year-old fine, talking to girls fine. But then they started to add to the list. You have to be a millionaire. You have to you have to be well traveled. You have to be work for yourself. You can't have a corporate gig.
Well, you know what that all boils down to, right? It's always the be like me, it worked for me spiel. But then the guy isn't like that either.
Oh, part of it is probably that, but I think it's also that content proliferation is kind of taking over the space, and that people are consuming insane levels of content. Just like watching this show, The Rule Zeros. You have Donovan's podcast. Like back in the day, Donovan's was like the only red pill podcast.
Oh yeah, there was Donovan and one other guy. I can't remember his. Oh,
Mark
Tony
Baxter.
Sotomayor, I think. Oh, and Baxter. Oh yeah, his
Yeah.
little bluesy one. I remember that. Did he ever put that back up, or is it just gone now?
I have no idea what he did. But anyway, so you have all these kind of, and if you're going to watch all of it, it's kind of like the WWE. They have a show on every day, plus pay-per-views, plus the behind-the-scenes entertainment stuff. Then you have all the AEW shit. You have the New Japan stuff. You have the various Mexican stuff. So you can watch wrestling 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's a bit too much.
Oh, speaking of that, I was super proud of that too. This is totally off topic, but I have to say it. Hasbro, it has a YouTube channel, and it turns out they live stream G.I. Joe cartoons 24/7, 365. I'm starting to find my new like Saturday 6 in the morning to 7 in the morning ritual now to watch an episode of G.I. Joe. Dude, they don't make it like that anymore. Kids today won't know the joy of waking up in the morning, having like a coffee or some cereal, and watching like a terrorist battle with laser guns and robots. It's like, poor kids, man, watching Dexter's Laboratory or some shit. You guys don't even know. I don't know if you were a fan of it.
G.I. Joe?
Yeah.
No, I watched this other knockoff shit.
GoBots?
Mask was obviously big.
Yeah.
And then you had like Captain Planet was big.
Yeah.
And I made a meme that I didn't post because I called out a few too many people as the Planeteers.
Oh.
Except and then they weren't the Planeteers, they were the Faggoteers. And then
I have to ask who Captain Planet was.
I think you know. But I didn't post it because I figured if I'm going to get banned off Twitter, it's probably because you dropped a line in a meme there that's almost guaranteed to go viral by our faggotry combined. And then Captain Faggot. That was it was just two on the nose and two out there.
You know something is spicy when Carl refuses to post it. I'm going to use motherfucker 15 times in this tweet. Oh, okay. Serious note. I guess
I do stay off some things just on the basis that that account took a long time to build. I'm going to get it back. Like when I get tired of it, I'm just going to do everything I can to get it banned. but I'm not at the point where I feel like I want to get rid of it yet.
Look at you. You're one of those guys that instead of breaking up with the girl, you just start acting really shitty so she breaks up with you. You know that? You're the business
Yeah,
version of that.
I do that every time. No, but it's
That's why you got stabbed then. It backfired the one time.
But the whole reasoning behind it, and I've said this before, like if you break up with a girl, that's like the ultimate display of higher value.
Yeah.
And that's going to make her even more attracted to you. And that's how you get, crazy ex-girlfriends and girls that refuse to fuck off. Because if you're breaking up with her, it's because you're tired of fucking her. So that sex isn't going to be a drawback either. You don't want any rebounds with that shit. But
Right.
if she breaks up with you, even if it's your idea, then she jumps past all of that.
Well, and that's the good part of like the old school sphere advice. I think I was like the mention of how do you get rid of a BPD chick? It's like act as unattractive as you can, so then she dumps you, so then you don't have to put up with her trying to skin your animals while you're out in school or at work.
Yeah, like you have two ways there. Like one way is just to act as beta as possible, and the other one is just be very truthful. Especially if it's played, it's like, come on, you're not going to meet my parents. You're a fucking toy.
I've never tried that one, so I'd be kind of curious how that played out. Ooh, look at this. A little thank you for you as
One
well.
girl was actually kind of hilarious because she was kind of obsessed with my notch count.
Right?
So I just started texting her. So I told her my notch count after, she nagged enough. And then I figured I'll text her updates. And I just started texting her whenever my notch count went up. She could handle that for like 3 days, and then I got a text back like, I don't think we should see each other anymore.
Jeez. I'm just picturing the girl you're in bed with. Who are you texting at this late at night? Oh, chick. What? Why? Oh, it's not what you think. Dude, I love those too. There's a guy in my community right now who's like that. Like, most people, when it comes to issues with sex or relationships or dating or pickup or whatever, it's always they have too much beta and not enough alpha. But he's one of the few guys that has too much alpha and he doesn't have enough like beta to make anything long lasting, and he's kind of getting tired of it. And that's exactly the kind of attitude you're seeing coming at his stuff, where he's like pulls the stuff that sounds really macho and really good for bravado, and then he kind of is like, oh, this sucks because now I can't keep her around. And I'm like, I love seeing those field reports and those people talking about things just to let the up and comers that are still building themselves some value to know like what happens on the other side of the rainbow, like attractive man problems.
By the way, that PTSD super chat there that you just pulled down, I think it's part that, if you think you're going to get PTSD and everyone is really focused on it, then more guys are going to report it. It's kind of like for a while there when it became everyone remembers like the rush of divorces that suddenly showed up in like the 80s, or maybe the early 90s, depending on where in the world you were.
Right.
And then everyone was like, holy shit, everyone's parents are getting divorced. And then they kind of slowed down again. Same thing when, Queer Eye came out and suddenly gay was being part of mainstream culture. There were a lot of chicks, especially that were gay for a while there.
Oh, the lugs.
Lugs?
Lesbian until graduation types.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the marriage one, we always know it's not because divorce dropped off. It's just that people just didn't even start. Like, I'm not going to get married. That's where the MGTOW win came from. And so, it dropped the stats. It's like if you stop testing for COVID, all of a sudden the caseload goes down.
Yeah, it's like that fun Trump argument back in the day. The whole reason why we have so many COVID cases is because we're testing so much. I'm going to order a stop in testing.
And he's not wrong, but you're not supposed to tell people you're doing that. You're supposed to make up some for, because of diversity, we're going to stop testing.
But
nobody likes to see.
It's kind of like they've been doing these tests now for a couple of years in different European countries where they check the runoff water from toilets and whatever for drugs to see like how much residue of cocaine are we finding, how much meth are we finding, how much MDMA are we finding.
Interesting.
And it's always like way higher than you'd think. Because when you look at because the whole way they kind of figure out how many people use drugs in a country is a combination of like how many people are caught with drugs and anonymous or pseudo-anonymous queries.
Right.
And even in those, like if it's illegal to use any kind of drugs, then everyone is going to be like, will I get caught if I admit to something here? And
the
let's say
studies
you're
always say no, but
but let's say you're in a school
mm-hmm.
and you're in classes of, let's say, 40 pupils per class or something.
Right.
If like 5 people there are like, yep, I've done smack, I've done crack, I'm doing meth. Hell, man, I'm high right now on those questionnaires. You know that the police are going to show up there with a drug sniffing dog, or there's going to be one of those random locker searches or something.
Yeah.
So people say no. And it's kind of the same way you can tell roughly how many guns are in a population based on ammo sales. And it's the same thing they're doing here. And the hilarious things is that you see a huge discrepancy between the reported result and what's actually true.
My God. So these implications are that people lie.
Yeah, exactly. But public policy, funnily enough, made by people who are professional liars, doesn't take into account that other people can lie as well.
Yeah.
Like
well,
that
that's
Ricky Gervais
the fun
movie,
example
The
of that.
Invention of Lying.
The invention. He has a movie.
He has a movie called The Invention of Lying, where apparently there's a world where nobody knew that you could lie, and this guy discovers that in like 2018.
Oh, look at that. Is that Superman? Dude, how do I not know about this like all-star cast movie? You got Ricky Gervais, Jennifer Garner, Jonah Hill, Louis C.K., Rob Lowe, Tina Fey. Man, this little cocky Brit guy, it turns out he actually does more than just shit up the Oscars. Good for him. I'll have to watch that one.
I love Ricky Gervais.
I don't mind him. He kind of got a little too... I missed him when he was full Christopher Hitchens, and now he's a little bit too much Sam Harris for my liking. Which reference will never get old.
Oh, yeah. We're here, we're not queer, but we're close. Get used to it. It's a good one in chat.
I like that. Oh, I was thinking, too, when you were talking about the studies and that, like, how many studies are there about female promiscuity? And everybody's like, oh, this has got to be honest. It's like, yeah, dude, if kids are going to lie about drug testing stuff, even when they're promised it's anonymous, like, is it any mystery that girls would lie about their notch counts on some random survey as well? Yeah, they will bring in the drug sniffing dogs, but girls aren't going to take a chance on that.
No, I went through a couple of those studies, and I went through the CDC study for the US and the NHS study.
Oh, there's a Berkeley one that's pretty good too.
And the whole thing with notch count is, if you believe those studies, most American women have 1 to 2 sexual partners. So either they're lying or they misunderstood and thought they were asking that day.
Yeah, that day, or to put it on a logarithmic scale. X to the power of 2.
And this whole thing is, about rationalization. Like, girls will have, like, my favorite movie scene ever on this is in the movie Clerks.
Ooh.
Where
is it the Death Star scene?
No, they're laying... Dante and his girlfriend are talking about, notch counts.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, how many girls have you slept? And he's like, 9. And she's like, you're such a fucking slut. Well, how many men have you been with? Like 3. And then later in the movie, it's like, one guy comes in and she's like, yeah, that's Snowball. Oh, why do you call him that? Oh, when you blow him, he likes you to spit the cum back into his mouth. And he's like, oh my God, your friend is such a slut. She sucked that guy's dick. No, I did. But you said you've only been with 3 guys, and he's not in the 3 guys you said. She's like, no, but I didn't sleep with him. I just blew him. He's like, how many dicks did you suck? And she's like, give me a minute. And she starts counting on her fingers and shit. I recommend seeing that. I remember watching that movie. It's brilliant.
Oh, yeah. Clerks was a good one. That's what scored him that Mallrats deal. Then he started becoming a little normie.
The point is, like, girls rationalize, men rationalize, and everything. So girls will rationalize down their body count. Oh, yeah, he doesn't count because I was on the rebound. That doesn't count because my dad had just died and I was sad. Mm-hmm. He doesn't count because it was in Cancun in the foam party.
And it's self-deception. They're not making this up. They truly believe that. Yeah. That those didn't count. And as long as they feel it, their truth is what counts.
Well, it's the same thing as a bunch of guys who felt like taking cold showers made them more masculine.
Oh yeah. My truth. I'm learning to make like timestamps as we hit different topics here so I can put it in because I realize a lot of guys watching these things may just want a certain topic or another, and it's way easier than just making a bunch of clips.
Oh yeah, I can see that one. I actually love that when people take the time to do that on YouTube too.
Yeah,
Like
so like
when
I said, I've been
Joe,
listening to these guys and I'm making changes.
yeah, like when Joe Rogan had Graham Hancock on,
Hmm.
and what's his other name, Graham something. I always loved like the history stuff.
Right.
But Joe and Graham would always go off on this like 45-minute thing about psychedelics and DMT and sensory deprivation chambers and shit. And I would have loved to have like, and I would have loved to be like, okay, here we talk about ancient history and alternative history. Then we talk about, doing acid and laying in a sensory deprivation tank for 45 minutes.
And then would George Washington be able to beat a grizzly bear in a fight? That's the standard Joe one, isn't it? Do you think you could beat a gorilla? Like a 500-pound one? I actually watched some clips of him with the Elon Musk one where he talked about airless tires. And he started talking about blowing out. Oh, it's funny because he was just talking to Elon about, and he talked about people who blow out their tires as if it was like the moon landing conspiracy. I think people are just too programmed to think that we live in a world that has tires that blow out. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with this? And then you watch Elon trying to take it seriously and answer that. And it's just like...
I think that's why he had to smoke weed in the end.
Yeah. Well, yeah, smoke weed because he forgets about the SEC investigations he keeps getting every time he has an opinion on something.
Well, there is that kind of issue because when you talk about that GameStop stock and they talked like they're going to look into this if this is market manipulation. What you had there, it was the first time it happened like that a group of activist investors got together on Reddit,
yeah,
to knowingly drive a stock up. But that's been happening for years in the market. Like you had that Herbalife thing where like one big investor was very public. Yeah, this company's a scam. I've got millions in shorts on it, and then used every media opportunity to talk the company down. Or when some investment back comes out like, yeah, you should really, really buy Microsoft now. We think they're going to have great earnings next quarter. And they just bought in like 5 minutes before they did that to get that little bump. Mm-hmm. Or the famed, Warren Buffett bump. When Warren buys a stock, it'll bump 10% automatically.
God, imagine have that kind of pull. But that's the funny part. It's remind back to our previous thing about Trump when he talked about there was too much COVID because we're testing too much. So I should probably stop testing. I don't think the problem was the GME manipulation. It's that it was open. Like everybody knew what the grift was because guys on Reddit were doing it. And you can go see it for yourself. I think that was the issue. People don't tell me an accurate survey of your notch counts. I need the lie to believe.
But it's kind of the same thing with speaking of that scam, Martin Shkreli, I think his name was.
Oh yeah, the insulin guy.
But that was kind of part of his strategy. He would short companies and then trash them in the media.
Mm-hmm. Worked well, as far as I remember.
But all hedge funds do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been doing that for years. It's like, okay, we're going to fuck up this company. We're going to short it. Then we're going to talk it down. We're not going to cover it, blah, blah, blah. And everyone could see that Wall Street and hedge funds especially have been doing this for years. And people don't want to know that.
Yeah.
People are okay. The way I read Americans, it's okay if someone made $300 million or $1 billion or whatever, as long as it's not through cheating.
Well, everybody wants a consistent worldview. Everybody wants there to be rules that make sense because you can work with that. That's the typical beta male attitude. I'm supposed to have a good job, and then you're supposed to sleep with me forever. Don't you know the deal? And then they get mad when she's like, no, I still like the pool boy. You're just too abusive.
Actually, did you ever watch that movie Bigger, Stronger, Faster?
Yeah. Was that the steroid one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the same thing when he's like, Hulk Hogan was always my hero. I had no idea Hogan was on steroids. And he kept talking about, and all this thing, realizing that, every hero he ever had as a kid was a mix of steroids and cocaine and God knows what back in the good old 80s.
Oh, dude, the wrestling scene. Those guys were the absolute worst. Girl has to go waving by like a good one. Yeah, I know. Yeah, what's not just that, the bodybuilding ones too. Like what was the body? Not
Pumping
iron, not pumping iron, but the other one where they start talking. There was that 50-year-old bodybuilder. He's like, I used to work out with Schwarzenegger, and my time's coming. And he's working out of his van.
That's bigger, stronger, faster.
Is that bigger, stronger, faster? Oh, fair enough then. But yeah, the whole thing. Everybody realizes that to get to the top, you got to do some fucking shit. It doesn't matter. There's a certain ceiling that natty will get you, and you have to use something to get past there. And financially, it's the same thing.
And there's a good comment here from Andrea Rodolfo Nadia. As long it's okay to cheat, but don't do it blatantly in front of us.
Yeah, you see what I mean? People want you to lie to them.
They want the world to be somewhat fair. And right now, it was very obvious that a lot of market manipulation has been going on, and a lot of people have been getting rich off it. And that was viewed as, publicly cheating. Is the same reason why steroids in baseball was a huge thing, despite the fact that fucking Alex Rodriguez's arms were bigger than his fucking head, and people are like, no, that's all natty, man. That's all natty.
Yeah, everybody wants to believe the lie. They want to have that. Well, that's because if you have that lie that everything's fair and just, then you think, okay, so he's just genetically built that way. I can't control that. I just wasn't born with the right genes. It's all that same thing. It's like, oh, I'm not 6 feet tall, so I can't get the girls. Those are the guys that want the lies because they want an excuse. Well, I can't solve anything in my life because I missed these genetic tools this guy had, or I don't have the family connection. All this stuff that's outside of your control. It's very insidious that people are essentially, they want the people that are screwing them over and cheating to lie to them so they can feel okay about not making any efforts to improve their life. I think is the best way I can think of to put it off the top of my head here.
That was a very good take.
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Thank you. Well, the trick is hang out with a bunch of writers that call you trash for like 4 years, and then eventually you get pretty good at putting a sentence together after a while. Here. Actually, I didn't want to answer.
Generally, like beta is kind of towards stability. It's kind of like, that's why I kind of call the Jordan Peterson the king of betas.
Yeah.
Because he keeps blathering on about order, and betas want order. They want a world where there's they want the world to be monopoly.
Yeah.
Where there's a clear set of rules of what everyone's allowed to do. There's no one stealing from the bank. There's no one, using loaded dice. There's no one, snatching properties behind their back or moving an extra step, because that makes them comfortable. And that means if they follow the rules and do exactly as the rules say, they'll get the outcome that they're after.
Yep. It's easy. It's predictable. You don't have to think. It's basically life on autopilot. Sounds great, except for it's boring and people lie.
Well, people tried it in communism, but even there you had like the back alley rules that, you can do a lot of shit and get away with it if you're part of this group or that group.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the thing, that no real socialism has been tried argument. And that's the whole thing. Well, if everybody would just be perfect and not make any mistakes and act just like commie Jesus, this all would have worked out fine. And it's like, yeah, but people aren't like that. People are selfish, manipulative, evil, little meatbags. That if they have a chance to do something and get away with it, they're going to do it because they want it, and it's not yours, it's mine.
And I actually don't mind that part of it, that people can, cheat and get away with shit. The problem is when you cheat yourself, when you tell yourself, yeah, I did the full 8 reps. Oh, yeah, I'm not cheating on my squat. I'm getting good depth here.
Yeah, well, that's the issue, because there was, I'm trying to remember, it's a sociological study that was, or an anthropological study that showed you kind of have to have a little bit of cheating in the system for it to work. Because I guess when people want to cheat to get their way, those are the ones that at the margins tend to make big pushes. Like, I want to say Henry Ford, but I didn't really look this up, so I could be wrong. He might have been on the up and up. But those kind of guys that make these huge technological leaps usually also cheat the system, so that way they get a disproportionate reward for it. But if it was just like play by the rules, nobody would act with that extra 10% of gumption. So the cheating helps.
I think that's actually part of the reason why the West became dominant, was that for a long time in history, it was that anything you invent, you come up with something new and clever, the king will just claim ownership and take it for his benefit.
Yeah.
But once we started to that, okay, if you come up with something really clever, you get ownership of that and you can sell that and make some extra scratch for yourself. then that creates an incentive to actually make new things. But then you have almost gone too far the other way now, where you have too much incentive to come up with new shit, and the reward is extremely high if you come up with something really clever. Like Jeff Bezos, for instance, he didn't invent anything new. He just kind of came up with the idea of, okay, we're going to sell shit online, and we're going to have a really big selection, and we're going to have really tight logistics.
Basically, the biggest drop shipper in the world.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you go too far, there's a Goldilocks zone where you need a little bit of cheating, a little bit of corruption, a little bit of guys willing to do that little bit extra. Same thing like Troy says, be that little bit of bad boy, or like Rolo with the amusement park bad boy. You want to be a bubble wrapped bad boy to excite a girl just enough, and it's the same thing for the world, right? Like, I don't think you or I we'll never talk about it, but I know for a fact either one of us has done something that if we admitted it would probably put us in jail, but got us ahead. I have no doubts about that. Neither is that guy who put me on that stupid list of people who probably who know about tax evasion. Funniest list I've ever been put on, by the way. I'm like, what the hell? We talked about that.
I wasn't on the list.
I don't know. Maybe you are. I never clicked the list. As soon as I saw it, I just screenshotted that. And I'm like, what? If you guys think I know about tax evasion, then I'm not doing tax evasion properly. Jesus. But everybody.
Yeah, that's what kind of the funniest thing, though, about... I'm not sure how familiar you are with battle rapping.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and some of the funniest things, there are people dry snitching on other people in their raps. Because a lot of it is, metaphorical use of various guns and various illegal shit you've done.
Yeah.
And when dudes is in there like, yeah, I keep my gun. It's on the second floor. It's behind the sink. Stash all my dope under a loose ceiling pile in the left corner of the bathroom.
I'm storming the Capitol. I'm doing it on live stream. You can watch me at the stairs. Watch me kick the window in. Pat Stedman.
My personal favorite was like the Texas realtor.
Yeah.
Who called out her company name and is like, we're here in the Capitol, and your girl, and she ranted off her the company, her full name, and the real estate company she was running on live stream as she's storming the Capitol.
Oh yeah, dude, she's making a killing on that little grift now. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. What happened?
She tried. Well, Stedman did that, where he stormed the Capitol, got arrested, lost his passport, so his plans to move to Poland are gone. So then he tried to do a GoFundMe, and they keep slapping. So she did that same thing, except for she actually got like $300,000 for her legal defense, although she's been bragging about being rich on social media. And I guess they're just throwing money hand over fist because they're treating her like George Washington 2.0. It's like typical. You could be a 45-year-old soccer mom and still do better than than any guy who tries the same grift. But yeah, that's just it. Completely stupid. I almost want to believe these people are very smart Machiavellian, but I know it's just literally you get 100 people to do 1,000 people to storm the Capitol, 999 get them arrested. One person did the correct combination of accidental stuff to win. And that's the ones they always show you, that survivorship bias. And I'm pretty sure she's the survivor.
I was talking to a buddy of mine about that because, funnily enough, I have a completely clean rap sheet.
Yeah, good. Me too.
And because we're talking about paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, I'm trying to anonymize this as much as I can. Okay, let's say you were transporting some illegal stuff in fairly large quantities.
Oh, Beanie Babies in the 90s. Yeah, I know that stuff.
Across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And you're stopping and you're enjoying a few Beanie Babies on the way, and you're not really carrying shit's openly in the back seat. And no paranoia whatsoever.
Right.
But now, it's now you actually have something to lose, or maybe it's that, you get older and you get a better, feeling for risk. Now the paranoia kicks in much earlier. And I think it's just that kind of the whole reason I actually have a clean rap sheet is just dumb luck.
Yeah, a lot of it.
Just the fact that, okay, on that specific road at that specific time, the cops were off getting donuts.
Yeah, and you don't know that, but that's the problem is that everybody assumes, no, it's because I'm just that damned good. Cops can't pull me over. They can't catch shit. But it just turns out Officer Daly was sleeping with Officer Weekly's wife. And that's why I hate, and dude, back to the topic, and then we'll get to the Irish Alphas thing here too. This is why I hate so much of the platitude Twitter manosphere stuff. The be like me, it just worked for me. Because it's a guy who, through sheer accident, probably fell into some success. And then he starts telling everybody, all you got to do is exactly what I'm doing. And I always hated that. That's why I like the red pill system of I screwed up. This is what I did to fix it. And then everybody puts like hundreds of those together and comes up with a plan. Because it's not built on survivorship bias. It's specifically built on the opposite of it. Like, how do you stop sucking? This is how I stopped sucking.
Well, there's also that thing with kind of dependent and independent variables, like p-values, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole thing with those are they kind of see how likely is it that what we found in this study actually reflects the real relationship between these two variables.
Right.
Like you had the whole vaccines and autism thing. They have this chart that shows, vaccinations spike with autism. And you could do other charts like vaccinations. Autism correlates with techno music. Autism correlates with video games. You could do all these types of things.
Yeah.
And there's no causal relationship between the two. It's just pure randomness that those two happen to correlate well together.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. If you guys don't know in the audience what a p-value is, it's what is the likelihood that the findings in this study happened because of pure chance versus like it couldn't have been random. It has to be correlated. It's like I guess a correlation test is essentially what it is, right? Carl? Oh, I think we lost him. But yeah, that's essentially what they are. That's why there's like a standard study, a p-value of like 0.05 as the standards you have to meet. So that's 5% chance that it's happened by pure dumb luck. And they're like, all right, that's good enough. If you guys want to know more about this, that speedrunner from Minecraft, Dream, has a whole bunch of like mathematics channels doing videos on his speedrun, why it was impossible. And they're showing you like exactly what they do when they look for p-value stuff.
And what I was getting at with that is just the risk here is, let's say what you did isn't what actually made the difference. You stumbled into success because of a combination of, let's say, 6 different variables, but you think it's all about one of them.
Exactly.
And then you go out and tell everyone, yeah, you have to focus on this one value, guys. It's all about the soap. The soap makes the difference.
It's all about the soap. It's your Lamborghini. It's your beard oil. It's your truck nuts. Girls love truck nuts. D's nuts in your mouth.
Okay, let's see. Irish Alpha. Peterson says female aggression expresses itself as gossip, innuendo, and character assassination. Isn't this like... That's exactly like the manosphere all the time, man.
Dude, I mean, your super chats, they always set us up for like a nice rant about fuck the manosphere.
No, but to be honest, like, this show is built on character assassinations, innuendo, and gossip.
Well, I will put us, and this is going to be me jerking us off about this. The one difference we have is we try to add a lesson at the end of dunking on George Bruno. Fuck George Bruno, and here's how you can not be George Bruno in your own life. So I like to think we're slightly above the rest. I'm going to call this section is going to be called Fuck George Bruno. I'm actually liking these little timestamps. They're actually kind of fun to come up with like catchy titles.
Yeah, plus you're learning to type properly. Maybe the next book will be faster for you.
Dude, it's the research. It's never the typing. I'm one of the best typists in the West Coast Navy back when I was in there. I was the fastest in semaphore. I was the fastest in reading light. I was the fastest in typing. That's why my spelling is so bad. Because my fat fingers and the arthritis from the accident. This is like watching like a runner who blasted out his knee trying to do another 100-meter run. That's what you're seeing with my spell check issues.
Fair enough. The 1 in 20 arbitrarily decided, and p-vals, your point of contention in the sciences. Well, most things are BS on some level.
Yeah. But I mean, how many things in life are arbitrary? I'd say a lot of them. Alcohol is a perfect example. The whole reason we have a certain sizing, a certain alcohol content that you're allowed to have on things, these are all arbitrarily decided. Blood alcohol content for drunken driving, arbitrarily decided. It has no factual basis on the amount of accidents based on blood alcohol level.
I still remember David Nutt. He's a professor at Imperial College London, and he got tasks with classifying substances according to degree of harm by the British government.
Oh.
And then they didn't like the finding when he said we should really ban alcohol. Legalize MDMA and weed, and we should ban the fuck out of alcohol, man.
Mm-hmm. And I guess he's right, but that's the problem, is that alcohol, that's like comparing, I'm not going to reference, but yeah, alcohols, everybody uses it. And so their absolute numbers are going to be higher. No, almost nobody uses MDMA. So the one death you get in MDMA is sample size of maybe 100.
Yeah, but that wasn't the point. They picked 6 criteria they classified it on, like toxicity. Like, it's very hard to overdose on acid.
Right.
Or weed. It's very easy to overdose on heroin spiked with fentanyl.
Yes.
So it's that type of classification. I don't remember the exact things he went on.
Okay, so it's a bit more like objective than what I was thinking. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so, and his argument was exactly that. When the argument you made, that back in the day you classified this as, oh, this is a cultural thing. This is what the rich people like. Oh, and the poor people like. You know why heroin and weed were banned in the first place in the States?
Ooh, do we want to go that route?
Like,
all right.
1968, Richard Nixon was about to lose an election, and he figured out he couldn't win because the two big topics were essentially black people voting. Republicans always have an issue with that for some reason. And the other one was the war. And he figured out that the anti-war people were mostly hippies who smoked weed.
Mm-hmm.
And the black people, they used heroin.
I think they called them the blacks back then.
Yeah.
Like they were
so
trademark.
So the whole point was, if you criminalize weed and you criminalize heroin, you can start doing search people's houses, you can surveil them, you can arrest them, you can throw them in jail, and do all these things to get rid of my biggest political opponents right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just yeah, it did.
But that's the thing, and I remember there was, I want to say not Thomas Sowell, but he's the only guy I could think of right now who would have said anything like this. He talked about like the criminalization of black life, and that's exactly what you're describing. Basically, what does this demographic of people that do me no good do? And then let's make everything that they do that these other groups don't do illegal. And that's, I mean, you see that now too, right? Trump supporters.
Yeah, it's obvious.
All of a sudden, everything Trump did is now illegal. Having orange hair, having orange skin is illegal. I'm surprised they haven't banned tanning booths US wide because of that.
Oh, I don't think he uses a tanning booth. That looks very spray on.
You figure it's spray on tan?
Then
they'll make that a class 2 substance. Yeah, guys, weed is free, but the spray tan, no, man. Federal pound me in the ass prison for that.
It does make sense. I'm just glad they didn't want to get rid of Italian, so they banned pizza.
But yeah, this is one of those things. And everybody's talking about cancel culture and men are toxic and war on men and all this crap. And that's all it is. There's people who have power, or there's people that want power. And then the people that are more than likely to take it from them, in this case, competent dudes, let's just toxify everything that they have that we don't. So in other words, being competent. Frat boys. Well, they're attractive and they get their way and they succeed. So let's call them all rapists. It's all these little examples. And I think there's something innate in our genealogy that makes us do this. Because it's just way too many people have this as their go-to strategy for it to be some kind of Machiavellian plan, you know?
Yeah, but cancel culture is just kind of classic tribalism. These people are doing something we don't like, so let's kick them out of the tribe. Mm-hmm. At the same time, though, it's like I take parts of it very seriously, but at the same time, though, should newspapers should Facebook, for instance, let your anti-vax things stay up if they lead to harm?
You know what? I used to be on the side of yes. But then after that gay lube oil fiasco, how he just completely ruined the red pill subreddit and the TRP.red, I'm kind of leaning on the side of no now.
Yeah, I'm split on that, because should certain things, because the classic is yelling fire in a crowded theater.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do that unless there's an actual fire. And I see anti-vaxxing kind of in that same vein. But my concern is if we go too far, then it becomes very easy for whoever has power to take away free speech on issues that we actually need to have a conversation about. Like, let's say drugs, for instance. If you need to have a talk about the criminal law surrounding drugs, but everyone who mentions that in public gets their house searched, then no one's going to mention that in public.
Yeah.
So you won't be able to have that conversation. But
and I generally like the idea of the cost of doing business. So like, yeah, if you let anti-vaxxers talk about the lack of like goodness in vaccines and how it causes autism and that's all nonsense. But as long as they're there, then I can talk about actual things without worrying about it. That's my argument. That's my biggest argument to be made about reinstating Stefan Molyneux. As long as he's got a platform, I'm not going anywhere. But now that he's banned, I don't know where the floor is anymore. And I'm almost thinking, I think I would rather have the anti-vaxxers spreading misinformation than be concerned about bringing up actual concerns with this. Like, what's the new one? The CRISPR. How it's not a really tested type of vaccine in that. But then again, everybody else seems to have decided, nope, we're just going to make the rules apply to whatever we feel is right at the time, and then whatever.
Yeah, but that's always been the case. I think what's new here is the ability to find like-minded people and the ability to get sort of impenetrable echo chambers.
Impenetrable is the key word there.
Well, have you been on like the conservative subreddit? Are conservative or something?
Dude, it's weird. Like a lot of things, even things that I agree with, but I maybe have a caveat, I've tried there, and it's just like this wall comes up of fuck you, and I'm just like, holy crap. You guys are, everybody's bitching about peak Redditor, and I'm like, you guys are just as bad. It's just you're not as insufferable because I agree with some of your points.
Well, it's the funniest thing about that I was going to bring up is that they brought in this thing because liberals were trolling them too hard. So they're complaining about there being no free speech on social media, but deleting every post that's not from someone who's flared as conservative by a moderator.
Yep. And no sense of irony to that, no self-awareness of what that implication is, and that's across the board. Everybody does that.
But the thing is, like, everyone who's been around a while and have, had drinks with a lot of different people throughout their life will have heard some crazy shit before. Right. That was on the level of whatever's being posted on social media. And the difference now is you can spread bullshit much more efficiently.
Way more efficiently.
Because it was like you can kind of go back and you see that whole the Hail Bop cult. What were they called again?
Oh, the Heaven's Gate?
Yeah, Heaven's Gate, yeah. Yeah, the reason why I'm sure if that was today, they would have had hundreds, if not thousands of members because they could spread their message more efficiently than, VHS tapes.
Right.
Because if you think of this in terms of like something like the total consumption model, are you familiar with it?
Not 100%. Like I know enough not to sound stupid, but not smart enough to know where your point's going to be.
That's roughly where I am too. Anyway, it's this model you tested it for alcohol and gambling. Okay. And what they find is at a given consumption level, there's a certain level of harm.
Right.
So by reducing the total consumption level, you automatically get less harm. Like if you have 10,000 dudes drinking and 1 out of 10,000 gets an alcohol problem, then if you go up to 20,000 dudes drinking, then 2 will have an alcohol problem and so on. It's a fairly simple linear model.
Okay.
And it's kind of the same thing with bullshit. Is that the fewer people who are hearing the bullshit, the fewer people are going to believe in the bullshit. But when you have a really efficient means to spread,
so you're talking about using it as it's a force amplifier now. Now instead of that 1 guy per 10,000, it's 10 per 10,000.
Yeah, it could be that. No, it's still 10,000. It's still 1 per 10,000. It's just that instead of being able to reach maybe 10,000, you can now reach, like 600,000 people.
Oh, okay. So I see what you mean. Yeah, if it's a 1 in a million chance of it happening and there's 350 million Americans, you got enough guy to fill up a YouTube video compilation. And now you see 300 people every day doing that 1 in a million thing.
Yeah, and then that can spread. It's kind of like our lingo, how you can kind of notice that it's spread into the mainstream.
I love how everybody likes to take credit for that. We did it. It's like, I don't know who did it. I think it's some stupid feminist that started up the article. They probably spread it for us.
Because, well, you even notice like young kids, not young kids, but teenagers using like classic like manosphere lingo. Like
Right?
HB10 has become common, and so it's kind of interesting how that spread beyond the space. But that's not really the point. Was here that if you can spread bullshit very efficiently, even if it's only like 1% of the people who will fall for that bullshit,
Right?
in America, that's let's see here, 3.5 million people.
Yeah.
So you kind of the key here has to be to kind of reduce the spread of bullshit.
But
And
then,
you also have to reduce the number of people who will fall for that bullshit. And so you need a combination of, I would say, moderation and education. You need to educate people so they don't fall for dumb shit.
mhm.
Like the guy who tweeted out, like, what if instead of vaccines, we just took like a weak version of the virus and injected that into people so they develop natural immunity towards the virus? And there's like anti-vaxxers go full circle and invent vaccines.
That is funny. Oh, damn it. I'm trying to remember how to spell it, too. They're having an argument now about pizza in the chat with this Andrea's thing. Have some respect for pizza. It's the only Italian things that we invented, unlike other stuff the Chinese invented. We just took credit for spreading like pasta and COVID. But bump. But Flem Couche, like, and then one more places in here saying Swiss pizza is better than pizza. And I'd argue Flem Couche is better than both. If you guys have ever had it, it's like a French, basically pizza, but it's not pizza. Ryan, close your mouth. Alpha Slot, don't tell me what to do. I'll open it if I want to. Thank you for the €10 super chat, by the way.
I was just curious, what's that French version of pizza? What's that like?
A Flem Couche, it's delicious. They have it here at Trois Brasseurs. It's this chain in Quebec and Ontario. They're like 3 brewers. They make their own beers, and a Flem Couche is kind of like a French flatbread, and then lots of cheese on top, no tomato. It's basically a pizza then without tomatoes, caramelized onions, very French flavored, right? But it's built the same, very similar to the way a pizza would be brought out.
Yeah, so it's just like a flatbread dish, basically.
Yeah, I mean, but still pizza. But yeah, I find I used to enjoy those better than pizza, but it's just because the French flavoring. No offense to the Italians in the chat.
I know I love the classic margarita with just tomato sauce, good mozzarella cheese, and then all the basil on top. I love that flavor.
Dude, I actually like Hawaiian pizza. I like margaritas too, but I like Hawaiian pizza. I like the idea of ham mixed with fruit. And now that everybody's kind of knowing that it's like a Canadian invention, they invented it in Calgary. All of a sudden, all the people are starting to come out of the woodwork as pro Hawaiian pizza. I'm making like this is my storming the Capitol, and I refuse to back down.
Well, I've actually had one good Hawaiian pizza, and their key was that they didn't throw the pineapple on when they put it in the oven first. They threw it in towards the end of cooking, so instead of burning, it caramelized.
Oh yeah. So like treat it like they treat basil. You don't cook the basil; you just put the basil on after.
So I actually like that. That was actually quite good because burnt pineapple is horrible.
Yeah, it's too much sugar. It ends up getting that taffy burnt sugar texture to it, and I don't like that either.
And the same thing with like crust on pizza is like the most important part. If you don't have that, you either have to do like the American style, almost like Chicago style, that where it's almost like a pie.
Yeah.
Or you have to do like the thin crust Italian stuff. Kind of when you get like the thick, non-crisp crust, it's just not good.
Yeah. And they taste too much like either bread or crackers. That's the part I don't like about it. That's why I do like the thin crust more than the Chicago style, where it's got like char on the outside, but it's still chewy when you eat it. If somebody makes really good tortillas, they have that same texture to it too, for the wheat tortillas. But it's very hard. You almost have to make them yourself if you expect to get it. Or you find some hipster who made his own restaurant in Brooklyn.
Well, that's the case with a lot of things, man. It's like you just have to find someone who emigrated somewhere and just started doing it like the old school way.
Oh, dude. We had that in Victoria, BC. I'm making a timestamp for this one. It's important. There was a place called Noodle Box. And it was the best Thai fusion you've ever had, because it was basically two hippies went to Thailand, studied under a cook for 10 years, came back here and made like a peanut noodle dish. So it's literally Thailand cooking made for like Canadian sensibilities. So it's got the best of both worlds. It's like China Lily soya sauce. I don't know if you guys have that over there.
I'm just really fucking tired of Asian fusion, man.
Oh, well, see, this is like, yeah.
Well, the whole reason being, it's when something catches on and then there's too much of it, and then suddenly every restaurant, because I like authentic Asian food, I like Asian fusion. I just don't.
You don't like the regression to the mean when Asian fusion gets
exactly.
that. Dude, Wok Box. That was the competition for Noodle Box. And I remember this moment. This is like 10 years ago. And I still remember this to this day. I'm sitting in there with my buddy and I've made fun of him for his food choices ever since. And there was this white, middle-aged soccer mom in front of us in the lineup. And she was ordering her rice bowl. And she goes, oh, for an extra $1, I could get Jasmine Rice. Oh, I don't think I want anything too crazy. Let's just go with the normal rice. And I looked at him and I was like, what in the what kind of milk toast middle class restaurant did you bring me into where she's thrown off by Jasmine Rice? Like, not even basmati, at least you can make a case for, oh, that's a little bit too crazy for me. But Jasmine Rice? Dude.
Well, to be honest though, like that's the actual rice they do use in those South Asian countries. So you're gonna want to go with that if you have to be authentic.
Yeah. But it's not even that. I don't like Jasmine Rice. Yeah, the texture's a little different, but flavor-wise, if the difference between long grain and jasmine is like a bridge too far for your palate, then you're not made for cooking. Just have some mayonnaise toast and leave the rest of us alone. Let us have our stir fries. God damn it!
Hey, don't steal my next account here. I'm not sure if you saw it, but I was kind of picking a beef with Ed. Well, a lot of beef. I was just making a joke about him.
Dude, I like you starting some shit back. It's so you don't see it very much.
No, the next Ed Lattimore is going to be like a white dude whose parents lost their house in the financial crisis, and they had to move out to like the Rust Belt.
Right.
And he grew up between like a meth lab and a Walgreens.
Oh, I saw that. Like, coffee's so white, it's got OxyContin in it.
A mayo so white it comes with OxyContin.
Yeah, that's the one. That was pretty good. I liked that. I was joking with him after. I can't remember what he said after there. Something. Oh, the sucking dick is like, hey, don't knock it till you try it. I even sent him a DM. I'm like, this is too funny. I need to like personally to laugh in front of you for this one. Just Mr. Platitude, Mr. Rogers himself. It's like, hey, sucking dick. Am I right? And I'm like, well played, sir. Well played.
Yeah, he's been on. I think he got too many new followers now. He's been making crack jokes all week.
Yeah. Hey, it's a good system as long as it works. He makes me want to be better.
I do kind of find those funny though. The like, I'm not sure. Your girl has a kind of a Canadian name. She doesn't have like Mexican
no,
name
it's not
or something.
Mexican.
No.
Well,
No,
it is. It is like it can shorten it.
Because we kind of noticed that whenever we have someone from that culture order something, let's say you're ordering Indian food, never let the Indian guy do that for a group of white people. Because they see, oh, this is an Indian name. So,
and they make it
this
actual.
is an Indian name. We're going to make it actual, and then you kill all the white people in the room.
See, that's funny. We have to do the opposite because everybody looks at me and thinks I'm the Mexican until she starts going with her like natural accent-free ranchero Spanish. And it always throws people off. So if we walk into like a Mexican place, she always has to make the order. Otherwise, they'll end up making it too Mexican. And I'm like 6 out of 10 Mexican I can handle, not this 10 out of 10 Mexican. It's just too much.
Well, like the weirdest shit I've ever seen was I was buying vegetables from like this immigrant shop. And you see there's a guy there and he's literally eating Thai chili the way you would eat an apple or a piece of fruit.
Oh, those people. How do they do that?
I think it's just practice, but I mean, you get kind of a culture shock when you're like, okay, I'll use one of those for like a huge noodle dish. Mm-hmm. And this guy's standing there like eating them out of a paper bag like they're fucking candy.
Dude, it kills me. It took me 10 years. I can finally eat like pickled bird's eye chilies now, like for fun. It took me 10 years to get there. I don't know how these guys can get that far in.
Yeah, have you ever done like the what was it called, the hot noodle challenge?
No, but I have a feeling I know where it's going. All right, what's the hot noodle challenge?
Oh, there's this Korean company that made the hottest noodles in the world.
Okay.
And they have two of them. So they have like the really hot one, and then they have one that's even hotter.
And
And
it's
I
the
can
actual chili.
handle
They're not just throwing capsicum in there and calling it a day, right?
no, it's actual like chili oils.
Oh.
It's one of those dishes when you eat it, you can see like the chili oil float on top.
It hurts your eyes just to look at.
Yeah, like literally when I made that noodle dish, I had to take like a step back when I threw in the chili.
Oh, dude. I bet you,
Really?
do you that feeling when you guys don't know this, you'll learn it. That feeling when you learn to cook with hot peppers before you realize that you add them near the end because otherwise you'll turn your house into a tear gas repository.
Yeah, it's the same thing when you're cooking with garlic. If you're gonna saute garlic, you always throw in the onions first, then the garlic, and then some kind of liquid because if otherwise you burn the garlic.
Yeah. Except for the garlic doesn't end up driving your house into the insane. I feel bad for the dogs when my girl does that occasionally. She'll like cook peppers a little too much. And I'm like, I got the tear gas thing. I can just sit here and cry, but they're innocent. They don't know. They just know all of a sudden they're in pain and they don't know why.
Yeah,
But
but
in the,
those bird's eye chilies, they're pretty freaking hot for like a natural chili.
I know it's pretty
But
impressive.
I find that it's actually easier to handle that spice if you have real chilies in there as opposed to just adding a fuck ton of capsicum.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. There's something either the way it's delivered through the vegetable, or maybe it's because there's sweetness in the peppers too, and that helps cut the thing. But yeah, real capsicum, I agree. There's a reason you have to sign waivers at that Hunter's Plaza hot chili store in San Diego.
I know that
Which
what's the guy from Man versus Food, the first guy, not the second guy.
Mhm.
They almost killed him in a restaurant
Really?
because they had one of those. I think it was hot wings challenges. Because towards the end, he was doing like because the guy got really fat during the course of the show, obviously,
Mhm.
because he went around America doing food challenges, and a lot of them were type like the biggest burger or biggest pizza or something like that. And but then he started to do more, spicy challenges because it was easier to kind of stomach that volume of food. And this
Right.
restaurant kind of decided we're not going to lose to this fucker on national TV. So they kind of tripled up on the capsicum or something, and he had to go to like an emergency room.
Yeah, I can see. Oh, dude, that'd be bad. Like this one too. I've had this. This sucks.
Yeah,
You
everyone's had
start
that
peeing
one.
spice. But hey, being alpha is hard work. I guess let's go back to the topic here too. What we were talking about, how making things worse.
Well, I would
Um,
say smearing chili oil on your dick while peeing is definitely making things worse.
no, not touching it, where it actually like passes through your kidneys and then you pee fire.
Oh,
There's
shit.
only two reasons that people pee fire: chilies or sluts, and both of them really suck.
How did that happen? How do you actually piss?
I don't know. It's you eat enough of it, then all of a sudden I noticed I had to, go when you go to the bathroom. I'm sure you've already had a fire ring issue at some point in your life. It's like
Obviously.
that, but it's like that, but it's number one, not number two.
Yeah, I've just never had that for number one. I was just kind of curious how that would happen.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you. I didn't write down any notes on it, so you'll have to figure it out for yourself.
Fair enough.
Run some experiments. Do a spreadsheet on it. You're good at that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. If it burns when I piss, I'm gonna have to have a talk with the girl, and then I'm gonna have to go and get checked.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be like the worst breakup story ever? You get chili in your urine, and you piss fire, and you think your girl gave you an STD.
Yeah, that would be funny. But and that's the kind of and back to the topic then about how the sphere is causing you guys harm. A lot of guys are giving you stupid like listicles. If your girl has colored hair, back to AJ, if she has colored hair, that's what frogs do to be poisonous. Or if she has a red handkerchief in her thing, that means she's in for anal. Oh wait, no, it's the gay community. Never mind. But you know what I mean? All these lists. Oh well, if she's deaf, she belongs in the streets, and they sound very catchy and they sound right, and draw a green line on it, and it's good. But then there's always exceptions to it, so it means they're not very useful. And it's not like an exception that makes the rule. I'm talking like half the time there's exceptions. Tattoos are a great example. Every girl in my town I was mostly doing pickup in had tattoos. Every girl. The ones that didn't just moved there and hadn't gotten one yet. So if I were using tattoos to decide on what to do with my life, I'd end up being like lazy, alone, not I'm a dry dick, peeing out fire because of the hot chili experiments I'm running at home. And how many different things do we have in the Spear that do that? I'd argue the 6 foot, 6 figure salary, that kind of nonsense gets there. I'd argue the tattoo thing and the hair color gets there.
Yeah, you have a lot of them. I started to do like that at one point. Yeah, Vans shoes. I know Rivellino did a thing on that. Like, what kind of shoes do slutty girls wear? It's like,
What
is
the
it
hell?
Vans?
Do girls wear Vans even?
Apparently.
That's like the Doc Martens when all of a sudden it became like a lesbian boot out of nowhere.
No, it's like if she wears Converse, she's down for anal, but if she wears Adidas, she's down for deep throating.
Dude. We've come a long way since the old. Do you remember if she smokes, she pokes?
Oh yeah.
There's a classic one for you. That was the original. That was the original Green Line, guys. 80s kids. Rob, you'll know this one. I guarantee you know that.
Rob invented it.
Yeah, Rob invented it. But it was true for the most part because I vaguely remember at the very beginning of my dating life that there was chicks that were like hardcore smokers and it was like sucking on an ashtray. It changed the taste everywhere. But every girl I knew that smoked did put out. But I think that's because of an oral fixation. Yeah, I knew he'd
That could
remember
be.
that one.
It could also be something like there's correlation, not because causation.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, okay, if a girl uses coke, she's going to be fairly easy to get a blowjob off because if you have coke.
Yeah. Or the pair bonding one. There's the other perfect example. Everybody's talking about girls who sleep with a bunch of dudes lose their ability to pair bond. Now, put aside that pair bonding is a nonsensical term and nobody can describe what it means. There's never been a study. There's never been an explanation of the process. People just say that for the idea of there being... It's like talking about unicorns. It's unicorn juice. When in reality, it's not that a lot of sex keeps girls from being able to pair bond. It's that the kind of girl that's willing to settle down and, pair bond with a guy, if she can't do that, then she usually has a lot of sex. Like, they get it completely backwards.
It's also like the old thing with, being a virgin at marriage. That's a lot easier back when the average age of a marriage was like 17 and not 37.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, who was that? There was somebody talking about that. They were like, they had a friend who's 29 and still a virgin. I can't remember where. It was on my community or maybe on Twitter or maybe on YouTube.
A
And
dude
it's at
or a
that
chick?
point, yeah, virgin in late 20s. And at that point, you're like, what's wrong with that person? Like, there's a reason now that they're a virgin for that long. And it's not because they're awesome.
It's kind of like that weird thing. It's like if you're living out of your van and waiting for your band to make it when you're 20, that's kind of cool. If you're doing it at 40, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. It's almost at the point now, if you give that tradcon listicle good quality woman versus bad quality woman, give the guy everything he wants, you're going to end up with like the most damaged person ever. All she wants to do is bake bread and be pregnant all day. She doesn't want to have sex until she's married at 25. Like, you meet a person who does all those things, chances are she's probably, I don't know, schizophrenic at least. But there's something in there that's not wrong.
But it's also the kind of thing where, like, even within like the hardcore, with both Muslim girls and with Catholic girls, they take it up the butt to preserve virginity.
Oh, yeah.
And if you had to pick a girl who's fucked 20 guys, quote unquote, the normal way, or a girl that's taking 20 dicks up her ass, how much of a difference does that make?
Oh, dude, I guarantee you, longitudinal study, those two girls, in 10 years, one of them has a husband who still sleeps with them, and the other one has a husband that she's basically so shut down to sex that he's sitting there jerking off to porn, calling it an addiction. And I guarantee you it's that anal girl with all the religious indoctrination that makes her think her vagina is like the evil devil hole.
It's one of those classic things, though. Like, I'm not sure quite how to explain it, but I'm just getting this weird association between, the could be the meme I saw earlier. There was, back when we had those DARE programs and you had all those anti-drug problems in schools, and everyone was like, people are going to offer you free drugs all the time once you become an adult, and it's like, fuck.
Just say no.
Like, well, how often have you been offered free drugs?
Dude, never. I was promised that they would always give you the first hit free. I've never seen that. I've always asked if I wanted to buy it, and I was always angry. So
No,
angry.
it's kind of the same thing here with those hardcore because it's kind of the same impulse with the abstinence programs for sex, the don't drink until you're 20 or whatever.
Yeah, don't do anything
don't
that could
do
possibly
drugs.
cause problems, because then you'll be a perfect person. Right.
And it never kind of works out like that. It's kind of one of those things you notice. Like the most slutty girls I've ever met were the girls with the promise rings.
Promise rings and very strict conservative dads.
Because if she's a preacher's daughter and her father is one of those fire and brimstone preachers, that girl puts out.
You know what's funny? My grandfather was one of those preachers, and I have 20 aunts and uncles, and I can say flat out, all of them fit that to a T. It got so bad because they're all like black Southern Baptist types, right? And I remember as a kid, every family reunion we go to, every single one of them would come back like with like a new white boyfriend and show him off to the family. Except for Odie. He always used to bring a native girl and a new car every year. I don't know why. It was something to do with like the native, like not having to pay taxes or something like that. In Canada, by the way, they don't have to pay taxes on most things because they're considered a sovereign country within a country. They're our Vatican City.
So that was just like once you've been in that abstinence thing, it's kind of an indoctrination. So either you're going to believe full out in it, in which case you're not normal, quote unquote.
Right.
Or you're going to be one of the people who cheat to get by. So you have the loophole, or, it doesn't count if it's wine, or the pork doesn't count if it's on a burger.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
I only do it around white people, so it doesn't count. Yeah, those things.
Yeah, and you get all those things, and then you have like the third one where people are like, okay, this is bullshit.
Yeah. And those are the ones that end up getting mocked religiously by the other two, no pun intended. Because the first group doesn't like you're not playing by the rules. Like we just said at the very beginning of the episode. The second group has a little bit of guilt because they know they're cheating and they know they're doing well because of it. And B, they have a vested interest in everybody else but them believing in the rules. So the guy that opens it up and starts being honest about it, he's going to be vilified by both groups. Even though he's just like, I'm just short selling GME like they taught me how to do in hedge fund school. I don't know what you guys are mad about.
Yeah, it's like the same thing. I think one of my first things I tweeted out was the brimstone preacher principle, which is that the harder the preacher talks about homosexuality from the pulpit, the more likely he is to be caught in a truck stop with a male prostitute wearing leather chaps.
I remember that one. That was like 2 years ago. And it's been true to this day. Only 90s and 2000s kids will remember this. Every evangelical preacher.
It's the same thing though with like there was a while there where a bunch of famous guys were like, oh yeah, I'm a feminist, and that became like a big badge of honor in that group. And like I don't think there was an exception to the rule that whenever someone came out really hard as a feminist, a male, there would be like 2 weeks later like 18 sexual assault charges.
Mm-hmm. Dude, that got so popular. There was like a Stone Toss comic on that, where he was talking about how animals do camouflage to hide in the wild from predators or to like attract mates. And then it showed like a guy with like a pink pussy hat and stuff, and it was just super funny.
It's just, and that abstinence thing is just never worked.
Well, it was kind of like that was just on his face. Sorry,
that was one of the funnier. No, I was actually watching something on that earlier, where you were kind of seeing the old British way of dealing with opiates prior to the war on drugs was if you used opiates, you got a prescription for it and you could just go and get it from a pharmacist. So you could get high legally, the state didn't mind. Then they imported like the whole thing from the US with the war on drugs. And suddenly everyone using heroin. First off, there were like 300 people using heroin in Britain in like 1959.
Mm-hmm.
There were hundreds of thousands after they started criminalizing it. And then you had the issue with they started to get worse health because they no longer had to go see a doctor for a prescription. And they started to get chased everywhere by police.
Yeah.
And what I thought was interesting about that was just the fact that, okay, so the whole argument is, okay, we need to get rid of this stuff so people won't do it because that will hurt them. So we're going to use the police to beat the shit out of them until they stop, because we will scare them away from the heroin. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, yeah, because heroin addicts could die whenever they shoot up. I don't think fear of the police is going to stop them.
Yeah,
The fear of death won't stop them. And whenever you have those things where you say you're not allowed to do this, people who do it end up becoming fucked up because of it. Like the girls with the abstinence programs take it up the ass, and suddenly the rectum's prolapsed. Then the preacher who goes out against gay people turns out to be gay, and then he loses his church and his support from Gary Faldwell or whatever the fuck his name is.
Oh, and then Tammy Faye's crying ass wife.
And then all the Republican politicians have to come out like, yeah, we had no idea it was like this. And then suddenly those Republican politicians are caught in like airport fucking bathrooms.
But you know what I mean? Like they take what was like a manageable problem with a fairly like livable solution. It has to come from a pharmacist. It's the same as like my mom did this when I was a kid. Underage booze, right? She goes, I know underage kids are going to drink, but I'll buy you your booze. So that way at least she knew I'm not going to buy something stupid and drink myself to death or became an alcohol problem. And she'll know if I'm drinking too much. So just call me when you need something, I'll bring it. And sure enough, I never developed an alcohol problem. Plus, she knew not to get me like bitch pop.
Yeah, like but my parents did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole reason was, kids are going to get booze, but you don't know, are they getting legally produced? Are they getting some black market shit?
Yeah, how much are they getting?
Are they getting like Everclear and doing shots of Everclear? That type of thing. And once you can say, okay, I gave him a 12-pack of beer. When he needs more, he'll call me. So if he goes through 4 12-packs in a week, then I can talk to him about, okay, I think you might be overdoing it.
Yeah. But it's like, and it's not permissive parenting. That's the argument they make for it. And it's the same for like, not being judgmental with chicks either when you're hanging out with them. So they'll tell you all their slutty pasts. You got to understand what the actual goal is. And you, like you said, with the opium ones, I picture some old grandfather. My grandfather didn't die in the opium wars for this shit. But what was the goal? The goal was to do less harm or to have more good, right? So if you have it has to come from a pharmacist, you get your opium there. There's people that do heroin. Your pharmacist is going to know, like, you just came back yesterday for like way too much heroin to use in a single day, dude. I'm not going to sell you anymore today. People are still doing what they're doing, but at least nobody's dying in the streets or stealing VCRs. But then you're right. As soon as they try to crack down and fix it because it's the moral thing to do and it's a great signal, not only do you get those classes of people, you get the guys that buy into the rules because they want consistency, lying to themselves. You got the people that skirt the rules and cheat, now spreading the lie because it's in their self-interest too. And then in the middle, you got these guys that are just honest about, in your example, I want to do heroin, and they just end up dying in the streets now because everybody else wants to be a good person and have consistent rules and lie without getting caught.
Yeah, and I saw this with chicks not fucking too. That abstinence programs. Girls that have been in abstinence programs get pregnant more often and get more STDs because no one's ever taken the time to explain, like, if you're going to fuck, wear a condom.
Yeah.
If it burns when you pee, you either had too much of Ryan's chili or you have gonorrhea, so go see a doctor.
Yeah. Here's what birth control is. Or any number of like risk mitigation or damage mitigation measures. Yeah, Irish Alpha here too. Again, thanks for the €5 super chat. Hitchens used to say that. A trend of anti-porn, pro-family value Tories caught with their pants down getting spanked. Repressed desire. And I think the Middle East aren't they going through that issue right now? Where they're starting to find
but
that soft harem shit?
Well, that you have those marriages. You also have the issue with the girls flying to, is it
Dubai
to get like hymen replacements. You have a lot of the guys who are going to clubs in like southern Spain and shit to do a lot of gay stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just because they can't do it at home. And, I always like to reference Hitchens again. He once said that like the 3 biggest Johnny Walker customers at one point were like the Saudi regime, the Iraqi Baath Party, and it was 3 countries in the Middle East. It was the Iraqis, the 3 huge like anti-alcohol countries. Like if you're how are you buying that much whiskey if alcohol is banned in your country?
Yeah. That's the funny thing. And dude, we were talking about during our deployment. We were always searching for like contraband. Every captain wants to find that $80 million coke bust on a ship, but we never did. We found a lot of booze runs though. And then our intelligence team started doing some research. Just for like a couple cases of Johnny Walker, those little dhows, small little fishing boat, just smuggling booze into Yemen, $500,000 per run. It's like 10 times markup on alcohol. And then, like you said, just because they're like, we don't want you guys to drink because we want to be a productive society, not only did they make it worse, because people are now drinking as like a forbidden fruit and causing more damage, but now they've created an entire black market crime syndicate. Like, there's just nothing good about this stuff. The entire process.
There's a very good documentary on Netflix called The Business of Drugs.
Mm-hmm.
It's brilliant. They go through the entire supply chain from like, okay, you have these farmers out here doing coca leaves.
Right.
And then they're grinding that shit to a paste and it's worth, $10 for like a full like sack of coca leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the refinement process and everything. And, going from like this city in Mexico across the border, it goes from like 20K to 40K. It's really interesting to kind of see how much cash was left on the table, was involved in that supply chain.
Yeah. Well, isn't that it? It's like Canadian booze. It ends up like 80% of the price of the thing is just all the logistics surrounding it as opposed to the product itself, right?
Yeah, that's a classic one. But get back on topic, though. Abstinence, noFap. Should we mention that?
Oh, why not? I've always got time to dunk. We got 20 minutes. We can dunk on noFap. Make a note on this. 1 minute 41, noFap.
Because like that one never made sense to me. Like I can see it because there's like Freud has these defense mechanisms lined out in one of his books, and one of them is sublimation, which is where you use the unproductive desire to do something better. And I can kind of see that if you figure, okay, you know what, I'm not going to jerk off, even though jerking off is kind of healthy for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it has to do with some kind of correlation with, prostate cancer and a bunch of other shit.
Yeah.
So you should have, an ejaculation a day keeps the doctor away.
But the problem
anyway,
is it's a instead of adding a positive, it's creating a negative. So like the problem, if a guy jerks off and watches porn too much, it's because he's not having enough sex in his life, generally. So he just like, I'll stop jerking off to porn then. But that wasn't your problem. That was a symptom. Your problem was that you're not meeting enough girls and getting laid. So why not work on that? Well, if I do noFap, I'll do it then. It's like, yeah, but nobody is.
No,
you were saying problem. Something.
Yeah, I was going to go into that. That if you do that, so like, okay, I'm not. Like, you can have a rule for yourself. I'm not going to come unless it's inside a girl. And if that pushes you to do more approaches and get out of your house more, that's good. Mm-hmm. If you're sitting there like Ryan said, okay, I'm spending 18 hours a day jerking off to porn. Okay, first of all,
I didn't say that.
First of all, you must have really hairy palms and you must have gone blind. But point of that being that you're doing that as, a symptom of something. It could be that you're not seeing enough girls. It could be that you're addicted to a little bit of dopamine. It could be that you're using it as a way to avoid facing things that make you anxious, like talking to girls. It's kind of like the same thing with, I saw something about, people who were very, very overweight were scared to come to the gym because they were deathly scared of, people making fun of them trying to get healthier.
Mm-hmm. Which, and everybody who's been to the gym knows that's bullshit. Everybody who's jacked is too busy looking at themselves in the mirror to care about you. And other people are like, good for him.
Yeah, so it's just like, what was the COVID guarantee stuff? All
right, well, here, while you're reading that, yeah, that's the whole point. It's, if noFap was effective, why can I not, I ask people, who's the most successful guy who was like, I'm a bag of shit, I did noFap, and now I run $1 billion company? The best I've gotten is the guy who invented the rapid COVID test. Apparently said noFap was helping him get motivation. To which I would say, that's great, but doesn't that thing have like a 50% like false positive rate? And the fact that one guy, we can name one guy, kind of proves the point. It's like cancer. Everybody says that, X is the worst thing in the world, but there's only like 3 celebrities you can name that had it happen. Meanwhile, you talk about lung cancer from smoking. Everybody has somebody in their family who died of lung cancer. So which one is the actual issue? Is it cancel culture that only affected a Disney princess? Or is it smoking that's killed like 3 members of your family? And noFap, I think, is the same way. There's nobody has anybody in their family who stopped jerking off and then finally got their shit together.
Well, there's also the issue of, survivorship bias.
Mm-hmm.
That if people aren't sticking with it, then the people who are going to be like some kind of outlier in some way.
Yeah.
It's I saw this thing about veganism was on Joe Rogan, I think, with some kind of expert.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, most vegans struggle with getting enough is it omega-6?
Oh, omega-6 too?
Or omega-3. It's one of those two. And the biggest issue, I think it was omega-3 anyway. And he said, if you have a mutation on a specific gene,
mm-hmm.
you can actually make it from the type that's in vegetables. Because there is a form of it in there, but most of us just shit it out. We can't use it. But if you have this specific genetic mutation, you'll be able to extract that and use it.
I'm going to guess that's a Southeast Asian genome.
I have no idea. But anyway, so what happens with that is just that people who are very successful on vegan diets could be people who have a natural, let's say, proclivity or natural adaptations to handle that better. There's like a reason why Southeast Asians get diabetes at much higher rates than whites, for instance, or that COVID is hitting like people of color, or I'm not sure if it's just black people, or if it's Asians, or at least, the non-whites are getting hit harder. They get more severe symptoms.
Oh, sickle cell anemia, that's like the classic example of these genetic differences that has different outcomes too, versus malaria.
Yeah, and sickle cell makes sense against malaria, but it doesn't make sense when you're in a country where there's no malaria. Then you need medication so you don't die of a blood clot.
Yeah, I think it's a blood clot. Anyways, doesn't matter. Bad thing happens. But yeah, that's the point you're saying here.
You're my one black friend. You're supposed to know this shit.
I got like 20%, so I have to take malaria pills like everybody else. I missed out on the curly hair. I missed out on the being able to rap, but I caught rhythm and I got the dick. But that's it. Do my pro and con list. But that's my point. And here, I'm going to use Jack Mehoff's comment here where he talks. This is commonly what I see, and this honestly really quickly puts up my like skepticism shield. Everything he's saying here may be true, and I may be totally off on it, but these are all tools. They're not a solution.
Well,
and that's what everybody does when they argue this, They always say, well, it fixes... Yeah, please do.
Because it was kind of an interesting thing here, because put it back up so I can...
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so crucial proteins, chemicals. We don't have that issue. Like most people in the West are overfed with proteins, chemicals, and so on.
I got all my chemicals for the day.
Yeah, and then there's the question if the brain knows the difference between self-stimulation and external stimulation. And I don't think it does. Because if you take a corollary to dieting,
right?
The reason why losing weight is difficult brain-wise is that your body thinks you're in a starvation situation. Mm-hmm. Even if you have plenty of food, you just want to lose body fat.
Right.
And if the brain would know the difference between self-stimulation and external stimulation, then it would also know the difference between a famine situation and wanting to lose a few pounds so you can actually get external stimulation.
Well, and see, I know the self-stimulation argument too, but that was because, like for girls, when a guy gives them a money shot, we actually have testosterone in our ejaculate, and then they get like a shot of testosterone essentially at such a low level. That's why girls are super passive and very loving and into you once you sleep with them. But that's just it. It doesn't know the difference between self-stimulation and normal stimulation. It just knows it just got a shot of testosterone. For guys, we don't really have that because girls don't secrete very much onto us. They're innies, not outies. If that helps.
Yeah, and then we have Ishmaster here too with the $9 super chat. You need to end that with a 7, man. 9.97, not 9.99.
Yeah.
Okay, struggle not to porn or fap. Takes up a lot of space in my head. Can't go more than a week. Feel shame for not being able to. Never watch. Need to spin more plates. I don't think fap. Well, the whole last one first, like, will fapping affect your gym gains? I think that's kind of like the same issue I have with, the hops in IPA are estrogenic. Well, if fapping fucks your testosterone to a level where you fuck up your gym gains, or like one sip of IPA sends your testosterone down to bitch level, you have a much bigger problem than fapping in IPAs.
Yeah, I 100% agree on that. But it's the shame part that I'm focused on here.
Yeah, same.
Do you see what I mean? Like, they're building you these rules that you have to live on life. And we're talking, like, you're essentially in that camp of the guys who, well, as long as you follow the rules, life will go well. And I don't meet the rules, so I feel shame. There's other people that'll probably talk about how porn and nofap is portable. Meanwhile, they're jerking it off right after the stream that they talk about it. Those ones are just getting ad revenue from you and preaching it, but not living it. And they need people to believe that. But if they're giving you a guilt and shame that's causing you to take, obviously you're gonna jerk it, and then you're gonna feel guilty about it. I get that. And then you feel guilty about it. It builds up this cycle of like shame, and then more of that behavior, and then more shame, and then somebody calls you an asshole, and you get that like release. That's basically Catholic absolutionism.
Yeah,
you're allowed to sin as long as the priest forgives you and makes you do some rosemaries instead of tithing.
Yeah, this is a kind of the corollary with everything else. Once you ban someone from doing something, that's going to have stigma attached to it.
Yeah.
So you have to go tell all your nofap buddies that, I fucked up. I fucked up No Nut November, October 31st.
Hand in your AA coin for jerking off.
And it's that whole thing. And then I just think it's much easier to just have a normal relationship with it. But if it's porn addiction, or jerking off addiction, or alcoholism, or heroin addiction, if it's an addiction, then I would look into how to fix that problem.
And it's most likely a psychological addiction anyway. Like, it's not going to be a chemical addiction to jerking yourself.
Yeah, like, I can't talk about addiction because I seem to have when it comes to substance use, I seem to have like the least addictive personality ever.
Yeah,
because I can quit everything. Like, I gave up booze for a month, cold turkey. It sucked, but it was more of, I had to deal with these stupid people sober for 31 days. Fuck my life. Rather than, my body's craving alcohol. And I quit smoking cold turkey. So I don't get addicted in that sense. But if you get addicted to something, you need to deal with that problem. And don't be ashamed because you got addicted to porn.
Yeah.
And pretty sure most...
Oh, sorry, keep going.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure most guys, if left to their own devices, and if they could sit around in a room and eat and jerk off to porn all day, or have a girl come over and blow them, would do just that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's rosaries, not rosemaries. Too much food on the brain. 5 rosemaries, and then you could be absolved. But that's the point. It's like, people are stealing that religious indoctrination roadmap, and they're applying it to just random shit. NoFap's the perfect example of making a church and not touching your dick. And absolutely, I would argue, if you have a regular sex life, depending on what your testosterone and like urges are, maybe that means you're having sex every day with a girl, maybe it means once a week, I don't know. I guarantee you NoFap isn't an issue. Your issue is regular sex. And yeah, getting more plates or any plates is going to solve this problem. But then that's where the argument comes in. They treat NoFap like a brand. So now it's NoFap trademark. So it's not about solving the problem. The initial problem was I'm not having enough sex and I'm losing my mind. To, well, now I gotta follow the 10 commandments of NoFap. Thou shalt not burn when thy pee. Thou shalt not do this. And you're focused on the wrong things. And that's why every argument I get that people are in favor of NoFap, they don't talk about the problems it solves. They just talk about more symptoms or more tools that get you to a solution, but they never describe the solution. And that was that whole point of his thing where it's, well, your proteins and your chemicals and you get more testosterone. It's like, yeah, but what do you want all that shit for anyway?
And I think the worst part about adopting that kind of religious approach to it is that it's never really been that effective.
Yeah, and that's the other part of it. It doesn't even work.
Because if religion worked, like that was one of my big like disagreements with Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
Because his whole argument was that when you give up religion, then you need to fill that space with something else. And Jordan filled that with socialism. I filled it with whiskey. Big difference. I think my method's better. But his argument for why
real whiskey has actually been tried.
Well, his big like argument was that it was essentially Pascal's wager, which is that if there is a God, that was Blaise Pascal. Well, if there is a God and you don't believe in him, you're going to hell. But if there's not a God and you don't believe in him, then that doesn't make a difference. But if there is a God and you don't believe him in and you're going to hell and the alternative is heaven, it's better to just act like you believe. And that was Jordan's idea too, that Jordan's idea was it's good for society to have like Lutheran Christianity because it's not really that harmful, but it adds a lot of good to society. That was his argument. But my whole argument is that Catholicism comes with the guilt, and Lutheranism especially comes with the condemnation. Because if you look at like Catholics, yeah, they kind of get guilt tripped a lot, but Lutherans beat the shit out of each other. I mean, they compete over who's the most pious. So you get the Calvinists who try and kill all the other Lutherans, and then you get the Anabaptists who decide that, well, Switzerland is just not conservative enough for us, so we're going to go ahead and fuck off to Pennsylvania and use horses and chariots in 2021 and not have cell phones and shit. Because Lutheranism has that element that Buddhism has too, with giving up your desire for things and foregoing things and giving things up to show your commitment to the Lord. And then condemnation on the other side when you fail to do so. And the big issue just with that kind of thinking is you get very black and white.
Yep.
So you have to give up alcohol completely. You have to give up, like Utah was the first state ever to ban weed because they can't drink, they can't have coffee or tea. But a bunch of them went on like a missionary trip to Mexico and brought a bunch of weed back with them. And then suddenly the church was like, yeah, you can't have this either. Fuck off.
And it's almost like all this abstinence poorly prepares people for when moderation is needed. I know, like right now, legalizing weed is the hill you're picking to die on and whatever. I'm kind of like ambivalent about it. I didn't like it enough, and once they made it legal, I really stopped liking it. So I'm like, oh, whatever.
No, well, dude, I think they should legalize everything. To be honest, like I'm at the point now where I think, and I'm not entirely fact-based in this argument I'm about to make, but I think if you legalized murder, the murder rate wouldn't go up substantially.
I see where you're going with that.
Because my view is you have a certain proportion of people who are either psychopaths or they get angry enough that they're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to spend life in jail as long as this fucker is dead.
Right.
And you're not going to stop those no matter what the law is. And all the rest of us are mostly like, yeah, I'm pissed at Comcast customer service, but I'm not going to take a machine gun and go down there and wipe out their entire customer service department.
Yeah. No, I think it makes a good case for it. I like I said, I'm with you. I don't know enough about that to opine. Like, I'm like Rivellino on Twitter confident about it, not like competent about it.
No, but my thinking is there are certain things that most of us just won't do by default settings.
But I agree. I don't think there is enough people that would, like, I would have killed you if it wasn't for the law. I don't think enough of those people exist to justify it.
Well, it's the same thing as, the gun control issue is that, well, if we get rid of guns, then people will stop killing each other. No, they'll start stabbing each other.
Yeah.
We know that there's no guy ever who's been there. Yeah, I would really like to kill that motherfucker, but there's a 3-day waiting period on the gun. I'm not going to break the firearms law to kill this fucker.
The only thing I see that would make sense is because Americans now are so fat and out of shape that they'd probably get gassed after like 3 or 4 stab victims. Like, I don't think they could make it through an entire school. Jesus.
That is a fair point.
I guess I'll do. We got 2 super chats here, and we're technically out of time, so I'll just do this quickly. How many Johnny Walkner, Kalishnikov raids have you been on? I wasn't part of the boarding party. I was the comms team that kept communications open with them. We did 1, and my buddy had. I'm not going to say which one, but he had a little thing he did for every time they did a boarding. He and a couple other guys in the boarding party had to piss on the deck. So they did that while they were smashing bottles of Johnny Walker on the 1DAO. And then everything is religion except religion. I'd say that's pretty good. I'm going to make it call that except for Pascal's wager. I think this sounds way better. That's going to make that thumbnail.
Nice.
Nice. All right. I forgot to add your gendernomic stuff here. Except, I don't know if that made any sense what I just said. I'm trying to say one thing and type another, and I have a feeling I mixed them 2 up. But yeah, I got to remember to throw gendernomics up here for you guys. Oh, nice. Updates.
Oh yeah, that was kind of the most annoying thing. Mm-hmm. It's like, one of my pet peeves is when like you buy a big AAA game right. And then you download it and you're like, yes, I'm ready to play, and then it's like, oh wait, we have a 20 gig update file here that we're gonna have to do first, and it's like, dude, you just shipped this piece of shit.
I was gonna say day 1 updates drive me the most nuts, especially now that like nobody's buying discs anymore. You're downloading the game directly from whatever app store you're on. Like, how did you not integrate this day 1 patch right at the start? It's annoying. Although Esteban makes a good point. I guess we can end on his here. The law's not there to stop people. It's to keep revenge sprees. Revenge outsourcing. I mean, to be fair, that is a point. But
people who are going to get revenge are already going to get revenge. I just think there are, like, stealing, you would always need a law against. Mm-hmm. Because people are going to steal, obviously.
Yeah, well, the incentive makes sense there.
So, and, I think the best thing you could do with, like, stealing is just simplify the law. Like, and just go back to, like, the Bible, don't steal shit. Because right now you have fraud law, and then you have wire fraud law, and then you have, simple theft, and then you have, larceny, and you have all these different categories of stealing. And the point is just like, it's kind of like I heard someone say about Trump, it's going to be my closing point here, that we have a lot of unwritten rules that the founders didn't put in text because they figure it's obvious you don't pardon yourself. Mm-hmm. It's obvious you don't use the federal government to attack your enemies. All of these things were but it turns out not for Trump. So now they're kind of looking at, do we have to write all this shit into law? And I feel this is kind of the same way we did with all the other laws in the country. Is like, okay, you're not supposed to steal. And someone like, okay, I could skirt the law by doing this. Oh yeah, that's not stealing. We have to write a law for that too. Okay, but what if I do this little thing? Oh, we have to write a law for that too. And you end up with like these huge fucking books that only lawyers can read.
Yeah. Well, it's like the airport security law. What was the last terrorist attack? All right, let's make that a new check. And they just keep adding on top of it.
Yeah, but I think
encouraging people to break law as long as you do it in novel ways.
The weird thing there, though, is like you had the shoe bomber, and we all have to take our fucking shoes off. Mm-hmm. But you also had the underwear bomber. For some reason, we don't all have to take our underwear off when we go through the security line.
I think the only reason why is because there's no logistics we get surrounded by. Give it a chance. Now, with all this COVID panic going around, I think we'll find a way to make people take off their underwear for checks. We've shown that we're willing to do almost anything now.
Oh, yeah, and that's what makes me the most nervous about the whole COVID thing, that we've essentially showed the government that we'll accept pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm. Fucking a glory hole? Sounds good, man. Sign me up. 2 masks? Well, 1 was pretty good. 2 is probably going to be better.
The one good thing that'll come of it is you will only be allowed to fuck doggy style, so you can't sneeze in each other's face.
Only female to male oral sex is allowed. Male to female one, there's too much fluid transfer. There's the hill I'm willing to die. All right, let's end on that one. Yeah, guys, Rolo's channel, half an hour. I think it's like major Q&A type stuff. It's going to be an open free-for-all, so God knows everybody's going to be rolling in and out, and we'll catch you later. Buy Gendernomics 1 and 2. They're really good. I'll put the link
and get fuck files. It has a nice cover.
Yeah.